guys, welcome to the session. It is on the topic communication, and for the become third semester, the paper is management principles and application. Today we'll discuss about the communication. The communication is actually a learned skills, and the term communication has been derived from the Latin word communis, the meaning of which is common. Communication means sharing of information, an idea, or an issues in common between two or more persons. There must be two or more persons in order to communicate, because an individual cannot communicate with himself or herself. The person who shares the information or fact with other person or group of person is called the sender, and the person or group of person who receives the information or facts shared by the sender is called the receiver. Thus, communication can be considered as a process through which two or more persons exchange ideas and feelings among themselves by different means. So when we analyze the definitions, when we analyze the concept of communication, it emerges some characteristics, and the characteristics of communications are like this. It is a process. Yes, communication is a process of transmitting the ideas, emotions, understanding, views, emotions, then opinion from one person to another. Then at least two person. Yes, communication involves at least two person, because then an individual cannot communicate with himself or herself. The person who shares information, the person who shares the facts, ideas, feelings with other person or group of person is called the sender, and a person or group of person who receives the information or facts shared by the sender is called the receiver. Communication must contain message, because message is the most important part of communication process, and the communication is incomplete without a message. Then communication channel is actually the means through, or the medium through which the sender transmits the informations and other views, thoughts, feelings, emotions to the receivers. And it should be mentioned here that in case of selection of the channel for a communication must be proper or adequate, and because the success of the communication process is completely depends upon the channel selection, and based on the context, the selection of channel is actually depends upon, and the sender must choose the accurate and correct channels for transmitting his messages to the receiver. Then next characteristics is the forms of communication. Yes, communication is a way of conveying and exchanging one's ideas, opinions, and emotions, and it has a different forms, and the forms of communication is actually differ depending upon the availability of feedback, then use of verbal and non-verbal signs, and interpersonal, verbal, non-verbal, formal, informal communication are the most popular forms of communication. Then purposes of communication, there must be some purposes in communication. The main purpose of communication is to create an understanding in the mind of receiver of information, and the receiver should accordingly understand the message sent, and should respond the same. The next characteristics is it is goal oriented. Yes, communication is goal oriented, and is effective only when there is a strong congruence of goals of sender and receiver. And finally, finally at the end, but not the last not the least, it is unavoidable. Communication is always an existing and unavoidable phenomenon, and it is actually an actually interested and important aspects in our life, and it is also one of the important phenomenon for the business organizations to take decisions, to make strategies. Next, the communication process, actually how communication is actually held. This is the process of communication. Here is the sender. He send the messages. He send ideas. He send opinions. Whatever may be the contents, it is in the form of messages. It is in the form of messages, and the messages are encoded, and it is communicated through different channels. It may be the telephones, it may be the reports, it may be the letters, it may be the mails, right? And after that, it decodes, and it is received by the receiver. It is received by the receiver, and accordingly, he provide the feedbacks to the sender. And in this way, we can say that this is a what is a cyclical process. Communication is a cyclical process. It starts with the sender, then it flows to receiver, then again receiver responded the messages sent by the sender in the form of feedback. Next, there are different types of communication. Here it is three categorization. Media, method, mode is one. Then flow of information. Then organizational relations. Based on media, method, and mode, there are two communication type: verbal communication and non-verbal communication. In respect to the verbal communication, it may be the oral communication, it may be the written communication, it may be the visual communication, it may be the audio visual communication. And in respect to the non-verbal communication, it may be the gesture, it may be the body language, it may be the eye contact. Again, in respect to the flow of information, it may be the horizontal, it may be the vertical communication, it may be the diagonal communication. Again, vertical communication are of two types. It may be the upward communication, vertical communication. It may be the downward vertical communication. Again, in respect to the organizational relations, it is internal or informal communication. Then it may be the external or formal communication. So these are the types of communication. Thus, today we come to know about the meaning of communication, how actually from where it originates, and so I actually different academicians and different what to say the thinkers, they define the communication in different way. Uh, One of them, Fred Zimmer, he actually defined communication as uh, it is the intercourse by word, letters or messages. Again, communication is the transmission, interchange of facts, ideas, feelings, or cause or actions, and uh, and it has some characteristics associated with the process of communication, and then we just come to know about the how communication moves, how communication is actually initialized by the sender, and how messages um, flow from sender to the receiver, then receiver to the sender, and finally it is the different types of communication forms. Thank you.